Hey guys, hopefully you're having an amazing day today. My name is Will Rich, and for those of you guys that don't know who I am, we run one of the fastest growing YouTube channels. As you can tell, we're just about to hit 20,000 subscribers, and it's mainly the focus that we have in markets that are growing fast, whether it's AI stocks, quantum computing, space tech, or even nuclear. We're covering a little bit of crypto here and there, but mostly semiconductors and data center companies and the different companies that run the AI boom. So, we're going to be looking at quantum computing here ahead of this next week. And it looks like my dog wants out. So, I'm going to let her out. You go outside. Yeah, puppy. You okay? Okay, she actually doesn't want to go outside. So, that's okay. All right, guys. When we're looking at quantum, there's a few top stocks that we could be looking at. The main ones we're going to check are Rigetti. We're going to look at QBTS as well as AMD a little bit for a certain reason. And then definitely going to be looking over at IonQ there as well. Going. So when it comes to the QBTS, we're going to do a full breakdown here real quick. Couple things to consider. It's at an all-time high. It recently surged to about $19 a share. When we started covering this stock, it was just at around $1 a share back in November. We saw it really make a run, and we were able to make a considerable amount on the run up to $11. And when it sold back down, same deal. We were able to capitalize on some of these swings. We look at it almost every single day at market open. It's one of the main stocks that I trade, and recently they've surged to as high as $20. That's right, $20 a share. So a couple reasons why. There is the market of quantum computing, which has had a lot of momentum as of recently. If we're really looking at some of the catalysts, you got the quantum computing outlook. You got this $2.7 billion stimulus that recently passed. And if it's going to load here, I can kind of show you guys what that looks like. It's this Quantum Reauthorization Act. It's an initiative to put the US and the United States basically on track to be a top company in quantum. And some of the companies standing to benefit are IonQ, Rigetti. We also know it's possible that could drive some of the recent growth we saw with QBTS. But mostly where that growth came from was some of their announcements of their new quantum computing systems. And so with their technicals, there's a couple things to look at, but there's overall an overextension with the stock. So I want to make sure I pull up the live chat here so I could see you guys and that you can hear me and see me okay. How many of you guys have traded or potentially have thought about trading quantum computing stocks? Go ahead and drop a comment, yes or no, and the location for which you're tuning in from. Would love to see it. So let's take a look. Are things working? Looks like it's working. There it is. Cool. All right. I feel like I'm getting joked around with because we see the subscriber count go down. Oh my gosh, you guys. So when it comes to QBTS, really at an all-time high. It's started to make this push back up, and overall it is at a resistance. What can we expect for this week? Well, as you guys know, once it started to surpass that, $3 to $5 billion market cap, things started to change in the sentiment I had around it. Started seeing it as a little bit more overextended. And actually, if there was one stock that I would look at potentially shorting on the near term, it could potentially be QBTS. The reason why is they had a sale of their system. Like if we go into their financials, they had a sale of one of their systems that was I think it was like a $10 to $15 million sale. And what that did for them was it increased their revenue to 15 million in the last quarter, which is huge because normally they're around 1 to 2 million. maybe 2.5 million. And so $15 million in revenue was a big surge for them. However, it was just based on that sale that they made with that German company in Jülich. However, when you look at their cash balance, you look at some of their assets, their assets have been increasing. Like the balance sheet is starting to see more and more assets there for D-Wave. So the financials don't look so bad, but when you look at their market cap, it's about $5.4 billion. And the revenue, to me, I think it's great there in that $20 range. I just believe it could take some more time for them to solidly hold that $20 range. I think more likely we're going to see them more in that $10 to $15 range. In fact, maybe even pulling down. So that would be a $15 range pulling down to this previous resistance, and then previous support would put them, back around 8 to 10 or $8 to $15 a share. And I think that makes more sense for them. So that's why I'm not buying any short-term positions on D-Wave right now. To me, I think it's overextended. And in my eyes, there's just more risk than there is reward. I mean, you could take a look back and really just look at where it is. I mean, the RSI, the MACD is up there. It seems like the overextension there would make sense. We'd see it sell down. Being near the top, there's a lot less margin for profit compared to the amount of risk that you'd be taking on, in my eyes, in the short-term position with QBTS. So for that reason, yeah, I wouldn't touch it right now. But I like to keep it up to date, especially with the new developments around the US taking more seriously quantum computing. So that's a big deal. Okay, so we were here and we were split down. Okay, we're at 19,999 subscribers. What? You guys are awesome. Let's go. Let's go. D-Wave. Yeah, so the other key of when it comes to D-Wave, financials have looked okay, but then when you look at their news, right? So we take a look at D-Wave and go directly to their site. The announcements that they have are pretty consistent. They have a lot of new releases. Their cloud, their quantum computing cloud system, where you can tap into the quantum computers through the cloud. And then they just released this. They got a webinar here on June 10th on Tuesday. I like webinars. I always like to tune into them. So we'll most likely, tune into that webinar and see what it's all about. If we can't learn more about the system, we can at least see, the direction they're taking with their marketing. And I see Boris is tuning in from North Carolina, Wolf Riders from Texas. We got the Bronx, New York. I've seen a lot of our audience from New York City. So Mama Do says New York City. New York City is quite common, as well as California, definitely like Los Angeles, San Francisco, in the Bay Area. And then definitely we have a pretty large audience over in Texas as well. The UK, definitely here in the UK, or I get a lot of messages from the UK. California makes sense because I live in California and we're like right outside the Bay Area. But when it comes to like the Singapores and the Londons, that's always interesting to see. Yeah, so some people are commenting, yeah, I'm from UK. Paul says from Bangkok, Thailand. That's awesome. I've always wanted to go to the UK. I've always wanted to go to Thailand. Definitely will be making it out there. Stephen James says, Poplar Bluff, Missouri. Oh, sweet. That's beautiful. Yeah, so when it comes to the movements on D-Wave, just a lot of new announcements. The issue that I always have with their announcements is I don't believe them, because a lot of times they say, like, this annealing quantum computer is a powerful and energy efficient system capable of solving computational complex problems. Like, it all sounds so good, but then when you're looking for benchmarks and you're looking for hard data, I just don't see it. And that's always the conversation. When I went to D-Wave, I went as deep as talking with their executives and people that work at their company. I went as deep as meeting the CEO. Like, I went that deep. It wasn't like I didn't go deep, right? I went and I talked with the people that were super enthusiastic and super deep in the research. And whenever I ask the question, when they say quantum supremacy, and they say that they make this, these we're solving simulations in minutes that would have taken nearly 1 million years and more than the world's annual electricity consumption to solve using a classical computer built with GPU clusters. And then I say, so what is the classical computer that they're referencing? And how many GPU clusters are they referencing? And compare it to NVIDIA, compare it to the benchmark. And that's something that I don't see them do, that always is initially like, okay, so if you can't measure it, but you can talk about it, then I got to see the hard facts. And I'm always like that. And that's why I think they're overextended, because it's like, I'm looking for that hard fact. But again, we'll keep diving deep into them and we'll keep looking as much as we can. And hopefully that makes sense. Does that make sense? Do you guys all understand that? Like, I'm not a bear on D-Wave. I wouldn't be a bear like going to the events and stuff. I'm not a bear. Do you guys understand that the more skeptical you are when investing, usually the more money you will make? Now, notice how I said the more skeptical you are when investing, the more money you make. I didn't say the more skeptical you are, the more money you make. You have to invest to make money, and you have to take risk to make money. But the key is not anything other than getting a good deal, finding an entry, and all the things that go into that, and managing your risk and having your plan. But if things aren't adding up for you, you don't have to force it. So that's why I'm not buying at the top right now with QBTS. And I could be wrong. It could be keep on going up. Hey, that's awesome. All power to you if you're invested in it in that short-term trade. Long-term positions we do have with QBTS, and I'm fine to keep those. Awesome. How many of you guys are, someone says, great riders. Someone says, I'm from Framingham originally. Smell too bad there. And then someone says, where is that? Nevada? Way better than New York. You guys are awesome. That's pretty cool. Yeah, so when it comes to Rigetti, or D-Wave, that's how we're going to play it. If anything, I most likely might head on over. This is a little secret, right? Head on over to QBTX, which is the 2x of D-Wave. And imagine if we did a short. Just kind of imagine, right? What if we were to do a short and it were to go down into this $50 or $60 range on QBTX? Yeah, it's like, oh, so much potential for gains. So like QBTX, we will be watching. That one goes up 2x or down 2x whenever QBTS goes up or down 1%. Keep that in mind. So Rigetti stock. So Stephen James says Rigetti will be good. And Danny says, what are you saying? All quantum stocks will be in the red when one is down, all are down? Not always necessarily that one is down, all are down. We've seen it vary, but I do agree with you. Like, for the most part, they do stay pretty congruent. But like, you could look at Rigetti, for example. I mean, Rigetti's never fully recovered to those highs that we saw back in January. So we started covering it there back in November or October, around $1 a share. It surged to $21 in January. And then it sold down to $6 after that NVIDIA CEO announcement. And it's been volatile, but it's never fully recovered up to previous highs. So they're not fully tied. You could look at QBTS, it's recovered and gone higher. You could look at IonQ, for example, and it's recovered, but it's now sold back down. So they're not correlated. You know, they do have their runs together, but yeah, I wouldn't say that they're all correlated. They both have their own announcements. However, most of Quantum had a nice recovery when that bill passed. So what you can see with Rigetti stock, looks like last time we did analysis, we were looking for a potential bounce at $11. And Stephen James says the type of quantum computing Rigetti does is the most similar to what Google does when it comes to quantum. So it's very likely that they work together or are absorbed by or something with each other. Yeah, actually, that is, like you said, that's speculation. However, one of the things about speculating is that you can dive into certain things that you will find to be facts. Like I was speculating that they're going to work exclusively with Microsoft and Amazon. And then when you look at, for example, Rigetti stock, so it recently pulled back. We'll get into technicals, but you look at Rigetti from a standpoint of their tech. And one thing to notice about their quantum computer, right? If you go through their quantum computer and you kind of look at what the quantum computer does, and it all comes down to the QPU. Do you guys see this QPU? Do you notice how it's like empty? You know, Steven says, you know, they're probably going to be working with Microsoft or Google or what have you, yeah. So when you look at this, take a look at that. It doesn't have the quantum chip, but it's down to the QPU. So it says integrated circuit that powers the quantum computer inside metal package that thermalizes it and shields it from the environment. I'm curious to know, doesn't that look pretty similar to the Majorana chip? Like this is what we said a few times, right? Where it's like you look at the Majorana chip and Majorana 1 images, and I've seen diagrams of how they have it inside of the quantum computer. So I'm fairly certain, like if you look at it and you zoom in on it, why is it so much smaller? It's not a quantum computer, it's a quantum chip. And so if you look at it and you compare it with Rigetti stock, and you look at it and see this right here, this QPU, it kind of leads me to believe that this thing right here, this chip, will be inserted here. It literally looks like perfect. It even has like the screw holes in the corners. Will be inserted here on a Rigetti machine. Does that kind of make sense? So that's kind of how I see it. I think this thing right here, boom, right there. That's how I see it. So they don't tell you that, but they do show you that they're improving their fidelity. They do have some recent contracts, like with Quanta Computer, it's like a $200 million contract. And then when you look at the financials on Rigetti stock has this interesting runway where, you know, their net income's been volatile, in fact, pretty big negative. And you look at annual and it's like, wow, their net income was like totally negative this last quarter. And you look at it, but year over year, it's up. Then we go to their balance sheet. Look at their total assets. Do you see how their total assets are just rising? So their total assets are up 78% year over year. Total liabilities are up, but they are starting to see growth in their assets. So they have that runway, they have that capital of $284 million as of, this was March 2025, excuse me, which if you look at that 2024 annual, it looks like a lot, but they also had this recent partnership with Quanta Computer that was what was it? $205 million contract or collaboration right here. Was it 205? That was a share purchase. That was another share purchase, but I think the total is around 200. Yeah. So anyway, the important thing about Rigetti, they're starting to hold this trend. Maybe they are able to hold this previous resistance at $11 and make that run back up into that $14 or $15 range. But they haven't had any big catalysts. They've had more capital, but they haven't had more catalysts. So we'll have to watch it closely and see if they can make that recovery. If they do, it could be a potential about 30% swing if that happens. So we'll be watching this trend right here. They even kind of broke it a little bit for a second. But overall, Rigetti, it's up there. The financials don't show a lot of income. So you got to be careful about, you don't want to, buy something that's like not showing a lot of maybe income. And they can, obviously in the volatile stages that we're at with the quantum computers, there's always that risk they can continue down. That's why it's so important to, look at this. It looks like there could be more upside than risk. And then, having a stop loss or a plan in place before entering the trade will put us at a good position for the short term. And the long term for Rigetti, we got some long-term positions that I'll be holding and continuing to hold regardless, as I do like the long-term play. But it's important to differentiate between the long-term and the shorter term and the medium-term trading. So that's why we'll keep that in mind. Speaking of which, how are we doing? Yo, we hit 20,000. It's 20,000 subscribers, and it's all thanks to you guys. Thanks so much for all the support. Really do appreciate you all. We're over 20,000. Let's go. Yes, we hit it. All right, so we're on the road to 100,000. That's crazy. I appreciate you guys. All right, so when it comes to, so Dan says, look at the gate fidelity metric and number of qubits, so quantum volume metrics. Yeah, that's a good point. The chip has to be cooled, so it goes on the bottom of the dilution refrigerator. Exactly. Steven says, I've seen Google buy companies and just shut them off many different times. Yeah, well, maybe that's why they haven't been bought by Google yet. We'll see. They are out of Berkeley, so very innovative tech hub there. They got some genius minds. And Air Force just did a deal for $5 million. Where did we find that? That's interesting. Is that true? Let's see. Air Force and Rigetti. Let's take a look. When did that happen? Oh yeah, 5.48 million. But when was that? That was a little while back, no? 5-year contract. When was that awarded? Yeah, that was a while back, I think. But nevertheless, that's keeping their income pretty strong, because those types of contracts, those 5-year, they get a couple 5-year contracts, it's an extra, couple $100,000 or $1 million that they add to their bottom line per quarter. And that really goes into it. So they do have that Air Force contract, quantum chip fabrication. So for the Air Force, they awarded Rigetti a grant to further develop its alternating bias assisted annealing chip fabrication technology, which aims to improve superconducting qubit performance. So what does that mean? What does that mean? It means improving qubit performance by enabling precise tuning of qubit frequencies and reducing defects, both of which contribute to higher fidelity. So basically improving the accuracy of their qubits by applying a series of alternating low voltage pulses to the oxide barriers of Josephson junctions. Oh man, we're going deep. Yes. Okay. And that allows for more accurate targeting of qubit frequencies before chip packaging. This in turn leads to improved execution of 2-qubit gates and a reduction in 2-level systems material defects that degrade qubit performance. So precise frequency tuning, reduced defects, and improved communication. Why is that important? Well, when it comes to fidelity or improved communication, one of the biggest problems with the quantum, right, is that they're kind of noisy. They want them more efficient and less noisy, and they want to be able to take that data and actually be able to store it. One of the biggest problems and challenges that quantum computing companies are faced with at this moment is being able to actually save the data and store the data that they run through a quantum computer. I mean, if you think about it, they're working with 2-qubit gates, or when we get onto IonQ, they're doing like ionic quantum computers where it's down to the electrons. I mean, these aren't things that are easily, like, there's so many frequencies. Like an electron is moving at like millions of times a second. Like it's something that's very, very high frequency. And so that's why quantum computers are so powerful, because they can calculate things like that. They can see, the how they could see how something is moving in those frequencies to be able to come up with like massive scale answers to problems that would otherwise take millions of years on a non-quantum computer. And so with that being said, this contract, that's what they're doing for the Air Force. That's why they're getting contracts, why they're getting money. Those are the types of things most companies wouldn't be able to do, and that makes them here very rare, and that's why they make money. At least that's why they're making money right now. But again, they're going to need to make more money if they're going to continue these trends, or if they're going to continue to those all-time highs. So we'll definitely be watching their next earnings very closely as well. So when it comes to how many of you guys are cool to do a IonQ? Do you guys want to see IonQ and a breakdown? And do you have any other things that you want to go over before we continue? I guess we went over the financials, we went over the news, we went over the chart. So we're watching this $11 price range with Rigetti. They did recently bounce there, and we're seeing if that's a level at which we could potentially see them swing. So that would be, this is the beginning of June that they would potentially swing up into those ranges. But right now they are on this slight downtrend where they've been trying to hold above this EMA. So we got to watch that $11 price point. And that will give us the best indication, really that level, I think, of whether or not they're going to have that trend continue. But again, whether or not they continue or not, I mean, we really don't know. It's just going to come down to executing the plan that we have in place. So any other things? All right. Touch says, hi, Rich. Is it a good time to buy Circle? I'm not too familiar with that company. Stefan says, photographic memory is kind of a lie. It's different than that. I don't really know how to explain it. Anyway, I remember things. I have a similar thing where I remember things since I was really young. I can remember most things. A lot of times I remember things and people say, Will, how do you remember that, dude? I can't believe that. That was so long ago. And I don't know how it happens. I don't know. Same thing with numbers. You can kind of remember numbers. I guess it's like pattern recognition too. Like we're always looking at patterns all day. Maybe that helps. Matt says, if you think it's worth it, then yeah. Okay, I think it's worth it to take a look at IonQ. Let's take a look. How many of you guys have seen this trend with IonQ? We could start to see this uptrend take place with the exception of this big surgence up to this $48 range. Really starting back here in April, it's had this consistent uptrend. Kind of see it swinging between that support and resistance, holding above that 200-day moving average, that green line, and continuing its trend. Now, it recently shot up again to that $48 price point back in the end of May, sold off through the start of June, and then had a nice recovery there on Friday when it shot up to about $39 a share from $35. So it's still holding in that trend on that rising support level. That's why we're kind of watching. It's very similar to when we were covering it back here, when we started covering it back in October, November. It was on this very consistent uptrend, and it just had that trend all the way up into that $54 price point. And that's kind of what we're watching there. So that happened in January, and that's where we see it now. So it did have a correction, pretty strong correction on 48. There's the growth that they're experiencing probably is in part to this bill that passed. If you go and you really dive into this $2.7 billion bill, and you look at the company that was standing to benefit from this quantum initiative, it says, the senator said, investing in quantum research is crucial to maintain America's status as the leader in cutting-edge technology. I'm proud to support this bipartisan legislation, which will increase our national security and bolster our economy, both in Montana and across the nation. So they ended up being able to also get some support there from IonQ. You got IonQ, at the time it was Peter Chapman saying that IonQ applauds the senator in the efforts to reauthorize the National Quantum Initiative Act and the US government to employ quantum computing and networking technologies to help address many of society's complex challenges in areas such as security, finance, manufacturing, and life sciences. The important thing to note about that is if you go to IonQ, they do focus on those things specifically. So with their trapped ion quantum computers, they have some contracts with, Air Force Research Laboratory. I think they're working with NASA. They got Airbus there, Los Alamos, Hyundai, Google Cloud, Microsoft, Azure are customers, as well as Amazon. And their partners are NVIDIA. You can see some of the partners, they're really building that out. DARPA. You got Dell, as well as Q Control. And the thing about them is they're already developing their quantum cloud to be able to tap into it. But one of the interesting things about IonQ is that they have all these research centers similar to like IBM. And with their quantum computers, they're doing things like this battery materials. They were able to put in 20 years worth of research that the human race had collected on lithium ion batteries. And then they put it in, they were able to put it through their quantum computer, get it down to just 8 options. So it was like $8 million or 8 million data points, and they got it down to 8 options. And from the 8 options, they found one of the options. Their scientists found one option that increased the lithium ion battery efficiency by, I gotta look at it. I think it was like 70% or something crazy. So something insane. And so basically they run it through the quantum computer. They then, run it through AI in tandem, a classical computer and AI, to then come up with next steps to continue running it through a quantum computer. And so they have their quantum systems, and they focus on trapped ion systems. And the beautiful thing about this company is that they still are very similar to other quantum computer companies, that they don't have the revenue, but their partnerships are way more legit than most other quantum computing companies. Like they're there with NVIDIA, they're there with Microsoft, with Amazon, and that's key. So when it comes to their partnerships, they're very good. And when it comes to some of their news and their different investor relations, go to their newsroom. They just announced that they have an acquisition of a company in June 3rd. They acquired LightSync, which is accelerating quantum computing and networking roadmap. It's a leading commercial. They are a leading commercial quantum computing and network. And LightSync Photonic Interconnect platform supports high fidelity multi-nodal qubit operations and modularity, which are essential for scaling quantum computers. The company's innovations in quantum memory, repeater technology, and they complement IonQ's trapped ion quantum computing approach, which will advance IonQ's quantum networking systems. And then they say, with this acquisition, we're not just acquiring talent and technology, we're accelerating our development timeline to fault-tolerant quantum computers and long-distance networking capabilities. So it was founded by Harvard quantum networking experts and former AWS research leads, Dr. Mir Bhaskar and Dr. Bart Machasile and Dr. Levinonian. Those are some great names. And they developed universal photonic interconnect solutions designed to link multiple quantum processing units, QPUs, with high bandwidth to scale quantum systems. Now, this is really interesting because we were just talking about one of the biggest problems with quantum is that they're able to store the data. So it says here that it says IonQ is already a leader in enterprise-grade quantum computing and networking, and by joining forces, we're accelerating the path to modular architectures that will deliver data center scale quantum computers in the future. Our work will enable IonQ systems to network at speed and scale, and laying the foundation for distributed quantum computing. So like for quantum computers to network, or for quantum computers to be able to really become as efficient as possible, the data and the storage of the data is like a huge problem. Like that's the thing. And it looks like this company is going to help them with that. So they acquired them. That's not bad at all. I mean, that's kind of like AMD recently acquiring, what was it? AMD acquired this company, and it was called Brium. Brium they just acquired. And Brium specializes in building super fast software that runs large language models like OpenAI, like ChatGPT, better than other models that are used to run ChatGPT. So AMD acquired them so they can have their own kind of like ChatGPT or AI model. Yeah, so like acquisitions are good. And I like to see the acquisition with IonQ, and that's why we'll follow them here. So as you can see, they're starting to recover. I would say the margin for profit there is still, you can see it's possibly going to make that move up there about 10%, but has just about 5% downside if it doesn't continue the trend. So we'll be watching at market open, see if it sells down to that $37 range, maybe market open at 3 or 4 sell-off, 4% sell-off before recovering. That could be nice to potentially play. So we'll see how the direction looks at market open. Awesome. Yeah, so we went through most quantum computing companies. Steven says IonQ. Okay. IonQ, you say, took acid and went to a Grateful Dead show and then stumbled out of it. Went to a fish show. Okay, that's what happened to IonQ. Oh, elaborate. Enlighten me. Awesome. Well, guys, hey, thanks so much for being here. Thanks for 20,000 subscribers. We just hit it tonight, so I appreciate you all. If you want to be there at our market live session tomorrow, we just opened up a special sale. We got 20,000 subscribers. So what do? You can get a special discount just for Stockmates. So if you want to join our daily live session at Market Open, surround yourself with like-minded traders and investors, and learn how to trade and invest in quantum computing, AI, space stocks, and tech, then I'll encourage you guys to simply take a look at that second link down below. And I would love to see you at our market session tomorrow morning at Market Open. Right now we got the lifetime access, so there's not a subscription or anything like that, but I would imagine at some point in the near term, we will be moving back to the yearly. So just keep that in mind. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching. Find your thumbs up, smash the like button. Do consider subscribing. I'll see you guys